Hey guys, Tristan Williams here. So we were going to be editing this photo together, and I recorded the sound and I thought I was screen recording, and it turns out I was not. So instead of doing everything over again, because I did a lot on this image and I don't really want to redo everything, I don't think I can redo everything the way I did. I probably could, but I did spend about an hour editing this image and I don't really have another hour to do it again. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn every layer on one at a time, how I did them, and walk you guys through how I edited this image. And I just finished 2 minutes ago, but we're gonna do it again and I'll show you how I did it. I guess I'm really sorry that it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So what I did first was I created a master layer, and you can do this by hitting Shift Command Alt E. And basically what it does is it creates an image of every layer that's turned on underneath it, and it kind of just merges it all into one image to make a new image. I don't know how to explain it, but I did that. And on that layer, what I did was I went through with the healing brush tool and I cleaned up all the little hairs and like dirt and stuff that was on the ground. Not super neatly because since it's not a close-up picture, it doesn't matter too much. What I also did after cleaning up everything with the healing brush tool is I went over to the brush tool, I went to like 1 opacity, and what you do is you hold Alt and you select a color in that area, and then you kind of just paint over it just to get rid of some like the uneven patches, because I wasn't being too thorough with the healing brush tool, so I did this to just smoothen it out and even out the color a bit. Then next I made an adjustment file. So there's a lot going on in this folder. The first thing I did was go over to a curves layer and then just bumped up the exposure a lot. I bumped it up more on the shadows and less on the highlights because I really wanted to bring up some of those shadows a bit more. Next I did another curves layer. Let's see. I put it on luminosity here at the bottom. You want to put a dot right in the middle and then 1/3 of the way up at the top, and then just bring it up here a bit. And this creates a lot of contrast. I really like how this looks. It's one of my new favorite techniques. And then next I went over to a hue and saturation layer and then just bumped up the saturation of the whole image quite a bit. I know you can do that over here in the vibrance and saturation, but I don't know why, but I like how it looks better in the hue and saturation layer, or hue and saturation adjustment layer, more so than in the vibrant saturation. Next I did a gradient map, and I picked this one. I want to show you what this looked like before I did everything crazy. So this is what this looked like before. I don't know why I chose this or why I had a good feeling about this layer, but I did. So I went with this pinky red monstrosity, and what I did is I went to luminosity. No, not luminosity. I went to color. Still not much better. And then I just turned the opacity down to around like 9%, and then now look at that. It's like, I don't know, everything's pink and red, and I like it. Next, I went and I bumped up the exposure on these leaves and the background because I didn't like how dark they were in comparison, so I just bumped it up closer to the shadows. On the mask layer, I went through with the black brush and then just painted out the model because I didn't want her to be overexposed, but I wanted the background to be much lighter. Next, I did a selective color layer and did the greens. I'll show you what this looks like. I bumped up the cyan, bumped down the yellow and the blacks to lighten up the greens. It didn't do too much of a difference, but you can kind of see here how it changes the yellow tints and the greens to be a bit more green. Next I did the same thing, but with the yellow. I just bumped up the cyan a lot because I really like green looking greens. See, now without this layer turned on, everything looks kind of dead. It doesn't look as green as it does in real life. So I bumped this up to make everything look very lush, very, I don't know, green. Next, another selective color layer with the magentas. I bumped down the cyan, bumped up the magenta, and bumped up the blacks to kind of darken them. Next, I did a color balance adjustment layer. And in the midtones, I made it very pink. Then in the shadows, I added a little bit of blue. I also went through with a mask and I blacked out any of the greens and most of the model. I didn't want her to be super pink. One trick when you're changing the background color to make your subject look like they're not sticking out so much, you see how there's like a little bit of pink on the edges here? Sort of like the background is actually pink and it's reflecting pink onto her. Because when you're in a green room, your skin will be a little bit more green tinted. When you're in a red room, there'll be like red reflections on you. So what you want to do with that mask layer is you want to take, with a white brush, you want to do a really low flow and then just go over the edges just a little bit of your subject or your model to make them look like they actually belong in that color of a room and you didn't just change the background color. Next I did a black and white layer. I didn't do a tint on this one because I didn't want it to be any warmer at the moment, and I just played around with this until I liked what it did. This just adds a little bit more contrast. You could see I have the opacity set really low because I didn't want a ton of contrast. I didn't really like how crisp everything was, so I did another master layer with the Shift Command Alt E. I made a white mask on that by clicking this button right here. I went up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I do believe it's just set on, it's like 1.5 or 2, not a very high number because I didn't want it to be very blurred. And then with this mask layer, I went through with a black brush and painted the model primarily around her face and this arm and the flowers here because I wanted everything else to be a bit softer than it was. I didn't like how harsh, I didn't like the clarity everywhere. I really liked the clarity in her face and on the flower detailing here on her arm. Next, I went through with another exposure layer, or another curves layer, sorry, and I bumped up the exposure here at the top and on these leaves because I didn't like how dark they were. They just felt really dark compared to everything else, and I wanted them to be a bit lighter. Using a black mask, I then went through with a white brush and painted where I wanted to be lighter. Next, I didn't really like see how her skin's like pretty yellow compared to everything in the photo. I went through and I just made it slightly more pink, just a tad bit. I know in the last video of me retouching, I made her a bit more yellow because she was pink, but sometimes that happens, sometimes you change your mind. Next, I wasn't really 100% set on how magenta this pink background is, so I went through and did a color balance layer and made it warmer. Just, I like how it made the pinks a little bit more purple, a little softer, I guess a little more old, more close to sepia, I guess, I don't really know. And then next I went through and made this weird curves layer, just kind of playing around with it. I wanted to bring the whites down and bring up the shadows to give it more of a hipster retro feel. I still felt a lot of the shadows were pretty dark, so I wanted to do this to bring them up a little bit. And then I did it again with a little bit more drastically affecting the whites and stuff. And on these both, the opacity is very low because like this is what this looks like at full opacity. So obviously I was gonna put this down a bit because that was a little much. Same with this one, when it's at full opacity, it looks too hipstery. It's too hipstery for me. And I'm really sorry that the screen recording didn't work and I didn't get to do this with you guys. Though, be thankful because the video is a lot shorter because I didn't have all that to go through and do this with you. But here is the final before and the final after. So it's hard to tell how much more pink it got through the process until you like turn everything off and then turn it back on. I really like this edit. It took me a long time to do because I was pretty unsure on a few things. Let me know what you guys think about this edit, how maybe you would have done it differently or what you really liked about it. And I would really like to hear if you guys use any of my editing techniques or any of the weird layers, technique things that I do in Photoshop. If you use any of them on your image, I'd love to hear how it works for you, how it doesn't work for you, or like see an example if you've used my weird lumosity curves layer trick. Yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, I apologize, it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but I hope you guys enjoyed it and that you maybe learned like a neat trick or something from this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you want to see future videos like this. I'll be making sure in the future that my screen recording is on so that this mistake does not happen again. But yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.